Return again.
Welcome,
Return
welcome,
again.
everyone.
Return to the land of your soul.
We're returning here for another week, another articulation. It's so lovely to see everyone here. The articulation series is after the culmination of studies between our artists and rabbis. We have this presentation in which we get to share the art, the Torah, the ideas that came from the study, and to bring it out that it's kind of contained, but it's so uncontainable that we just want to share it all with the world. Today we have an incredible lineup. We have the Well of Wills, who was founded in 2016. They're a community of practice in pursuit of collective liberation, led by artist Mirav Ong, writer-director Nessa Norwich, and filmmaker Hannah Rudman. They bring together all creativities that speak to the soul and speak to the heart. We have also the privilege of having us present here, Rabbi David Evan Markus, Esquire. And he is the co-chair of Aleph Institute. He is second career from his work on the Barack Obama campaign, and as a lawyer, he serves to enlighten people through the spirit of pure creation. Thank you all for being here, but without further ado, Rabbi, can you please frame the Parsha for us?
Thank you, Devere, and thank you to the Institute for hosting this series. Well, once upon a time there was a creation, and the entire book of Genesis was about humanity and the collectivity of humanity titrating into the story of a small tribe that would become us, and a futurity that would make its way into Egypt. Exodus has begun, laying down the tracks of who we are and our notions of bondage and liberation. Mighty hands and outstretched arms, and 10 plagues and 10 commandments in Parshat Yitro, and law itself coming down, not just with the 10 commandments, but the next Parsha, Mishpatim. And now we're going to wander, and we're going to need a place where Shechina, the indwelling presence of God, can dwell. Yasuli mikdash v'shochanti b'tocham. Make me a sanctuary, a holy of holies, and I will dwell within y'all. Not it, but you. And that was last week's Parsha, Parshat Truma. This week's Parsha is Tetzaveh. If we're going to have law, and we're going to have a Mishkan for a place, now we're going to need to establish the ancient substratum of what it will be like to have people who serve the sacred. So now we get to the kahuna, the holy servants, and the high priest, the kohen gadol, with all of the adornments and all of the stuff. To me, this parsha is so visually riveting. Much like the last one for the Mishkan, this one adorns the high priest in beauty and reverent awe. But for so many moderns, it's also functionally opaque, if not altogether inaccessible, because we don't have a Kohen Gadol anymore. And so this parsha can easily seem nostalgic or merely historical. What is it like then to mine the depths of both the visuality, the beauty of this parsha, and also the functional opacity of this ancient system gone the way of the first temple and the second temple and the cultic system itself? To mine both of them and find in it our own reflection of our existential humanity, our yearning for the sacred, in ways that can still speak to us, perhaps must speak to us even more today. That's where my writing went. I think that's where the visual art came. and there was a beautiful synergy between them that we'll be delighted to explore. So let the sacred dwell among us here, and let the headband of the high priest that read Kodesh la Adonai, holy to God, be visible not only on the high priest, but perhaps as a reflection, even a billboard of who all of us are called to be. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, without further ado, Well of Wills, please share it with us the art that was created in this endeavor.
Devere, can you, I guess you're sharing your screen, yeah? Hi, everybody. It's nice to be with you. I'm Hannah, one of the three members of Well of Wills, this collective. And the artwork that you're looking at is our response to this Parsha, obviously. And I'll speak a little bit to the first sort of conceptual development of the project through photography. And then Meirav will speak to the mark making component that came afterwards. As a collective, we'd really try to bring our different modalities to the work that we're doing. As a filmmaker, I like to think a lot about the gaze of the camera and what that mirrors in how we see and what that kind of emotes empathetically and when we look at an image. And so what you're looking at, please enlarge your screen if it's minimized here, because I think there's a lot of really rich detail and you're looking at a triptych. So it's worth zooming in. We're looking at 3 images from a series that we did, myself and Nessa in LA, in Los Angeles a few weeks ago when we were just sort of in this experimental adventure to respond to this Parsha, and we brought our friend Hadar Cohen as well. And we basically looked at the text and looked at the preparation of the priest and the preparation of the garments for this priest, and saw so much poetry in and care that went into the preparation of, this sacred act of, leading the people in this exalted high priest kohen gadol status. And we said, first and foremost, as a feminist collective that's interested to bring a different and marginalized perspective to interpreting Jewish texts, we said, well, what if we look at the priestess as our model here? And so we sort of used the text to bring us through different themes, or to bring us through different gestures. And step 1, I won't actually make this chronological, but I'll speak a little bit to, on the right side, we have this image where you see the arms are like this, right? And we are looking at this idea of the memory stones, the garment that we're told needed to be placed on the shoulders of the priest to symbolize the weight of holding social memory. And so that is what you're looking at there. And we looked at the gaze of the camera as like the priest looking directly at the people. And we feel like this sort of intimacy is something new, something that you don't just read in the text, or at least certainly not the way we had in our conversations growing up. We didn't see that intimacy between the high priest. Even in the description of high priest, it's so exalted, it's far away, it's not close, it's not intimate. But we really wanted to bring this intimacy between the people and the priest into the images that we made. And you can see that in the other 2 images as well. In the middle, we're sort of meditating on the breastplate, the choshen, the amulet, and the notion that the priest needs to hold this amulet to sort of hold the care and concern of all of the people in their heart. And then on the left, the last thing I'll mention is this sort of, these two hands embracing is looking at this broader theme of Ruach Chochmah, the idea that the garments had to be created from a place of this wise spirit, that it wasn't just like, hey, you know, nation of Israel, gather some gold, gather your amulets, gather your bells to give the materials for this priestly garment construction fashion show. It's like, no, we're intentionally creating these garments together, and it comes from this place of deep connection. We think of Ruach Chochmah, we see this union between divine and human, and between priest and people. And that's the unity that you see in the image on the left. And from there, I'll hand it to Meirav.
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you all for being here. It's cool to share this work with all of you. So yeah, I guess I'll kind of continue with the theme of Ruach Chochmah, which is this like divine embodied wisdom, which is also pretty amazing, because it's like that is what was given to the craftspeople, to the artists to make. So there's this other level of the artists being the ones to carry this divine inspiration to be able to create the work. And so a little more, I guess, about the second part in creating these works, which was also new for us as a collective, because traditionally whenever we work together, we're always on site together, and it's a lot of hands-on, it's a lot of being present with each other and working in the moment. And this was the first time that we made a collaboration that was like in two different sites, and that it was like first Hannah and Nessa had the photo shoot and then sent me the images, and I kind of created from there. So I was thinking a lot about the colors we hear a lot about in this parsha of the lapis lazuli and the crimson and the purple. I'm blanking on what that's called in Hebrew. So that was kind of the inspiration for the color palette, as the like threads that weave this together. And again, wanting to the image of the hands crossing, the kind of 12 stones around, or symbolizing the 12 stones on the ephod, on the apron, as this like garment that surrounds us, that protects the high priestess, and kind of embodies her, but as the collective wrapping around. And then in the one all the way on the other side, the hands, there's something too about the Ruach Chochmah, that like divine wisdom, that it's in the hands. Like I think so much in Jewish practice, or especially today in kind of it's become intellectualized so much that we forget how much Judaism like exists in our bodies and how much it exists in our hands. And especially thinking about the high priests, that they're like symbolized with their hands, right? Like that's the symbol of the priest, is the blessing. And so that was a lot of imagery that we were using too, of like, well, hands as this way to like bring us back into our body, and to think about the touch, and to think about our hands as an extension of doing like holy work, doing godly work. And then inscribed in the bottom, which will be clearer, I guess we can soon move to the next image, but is the verse from, it's on the next image actually, Devere, so we can move on to the next one. That is inscribed the verse about Ruach Chochmah. But what we did with this verse, and if you want, you can go to the next image here, was because we're thinking about the high priestess. We've been, me personally, and then I've also been sharing this with Hannah and Nessa, the work of Beit Torah, which is the work of Yael Kanarik and Tamar Biala, who I know Yael was actually a former, I think, fellow of Jawbreakers, and they've been regendering the Torah. So it felt pretty fitting to use the text of Torah when we're talking about priestesses, as the text that we wanted to incorporate into this. So this work, again, thinking about the hands as this extension of divinity and divine embodiment, and creating a Shaviti, which is a traditional like Jewish meditation image. And so this being this image to meditate on in kind of this like kaleidoscopic multiples of hands, and the mirroring that Rabbi Markus mentioned, and perhaps we'll be talking about more in his speech, but we talked a lot about this idea of a mirroring of wisdom and a mirroring of divine embodiment. And then on the bottom, so on the top, it says Lichavod v'letiferet, which were like to honor and to dignify and to beautify, which are the words that keep getting repeated when talking about the garments of the priestess. And then the bottom is written, it's very small, but in the bottom it is the blessing of the priests, but again, rewritten in a feminine, with feminine conjugation. Yeah. You think?
Wow.
Yeah, that was a lot.
A lot, but like in the fertility of it, there's so much to talk about and discuss and react. Rabbi.
I am so delighted with what has come, because I'm not sure how often you'll hear this from rabbis, but I couldn't agree more that so much of the tradition has this propensity to be intellectualized and held hostage by the word and by the speech. And so the visuality to me feels urgently important. So I place myself not as Kohen Gadol, but as one of the peeps. I come from a background in government and politics as well, so I think about that representational role that the Kohen Gadol took on. The 12 names of the tribes, 6 on each shoulder, literally having the people on back then, his shoulders. But I think for another purpose too, so that every single person who would look upon the high priest, not then the high priestess, we'll get to that, would see themselves represented there. Oh yeah, I'm Issachar, I see myself there, he's mine. I'm the tribe of Dan, I'm the tribe of Gad, I see myself there. To me, feminism begins with the feminine, but expands to include the excluded. That the very notion of feminism is that consistent, constant drive to include that which has been excluded. And in our tradition, the first set of exclusions so often was gendered. So there comes the Kohen Gadol with Kodesh LaAdonai, holy to God, on his forehead. How then could it be true that we are all Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh? We are all this kingdom, queendom of sacred priests, a holy people, if it was only the high priest that wore the headband? So I began to wonder why. And through that realm of the representational and the visuality, I began to imagine the high priest's headband not as a signifier for himself, and not even a signifier for himself so others would see him as holy to God. That's too easy. But what rather if it were a billboard, reminding everyone who saw him that they are holy to God, that it was the very reflectivity that included the excluded, that made everybody Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. That the person who wore it was not doing it for himself, but for the tribes. And if so then also so now. The rabbi, the cantor, the priest, the priestess, the spiritual director are not to be vaunted. They're not to be adorned for their own sake. They're not to be deferred to in a way that is so vertical that people get nosebleeds or exclusive of everybody else. Not at all. Maybe that's why rabbi means teacher. That's it. Not a guru. All of us. All of us. All of us. And so the visuality of that, to me, becomes so important. That everything about the high priest's appearance, seen through that lens, becomes a mirror, becomes a billboard. You, your tribe on the shoulder, your role across the forehead. Maybe our ancestors couldn't have seen it that way, but if you believe as I do that Torah evolves, that we complete Torah by our midrash, that comes from the Degel, that our midrash, our sacred storytelling and our visuality and our art is not secondary to Torah, not a footnote for Torah, not a cute creative expression, but is equal to the written word of Torah, so wrote the Degel. And one who denies that, he continued, is as if she or he is denying the written Torah itself. And so I don't find in this any inconsistency. I find in this a necessary tikkun, especially for this postmodern world where so many of us in community would say that, we all opt in. We're all Jews by choice. Synagogue membership and relationships between quote unquote clergy and quote unquote leaders, they're not what they once were. And that's not to be nostalgic. It's rather to say our vision of spirituality is a little different now. So in order to make Torah as relevant now as it was then, we need to see with an inclusive set of eyes, not to be PC, but to finish the Torah, no different than has been done for centuries. And if so, Kodesh LaAdonai does not, in my estimation, merely represent who that person was, but who all of us are now called to be, who all of us always were called to be. In the same way that Moshe Rabbeinu, alav hashalom, Moshe, our teacher, peace be on him, was said mystically to include all of the souls of Israel. You had to start somewhere. Same with Aaron. So you are Kodesh LaAdonai. And so the art that came forward, literally mirroring, literally including who was excluded, even in one of them to be depicting the contours of a mirror, to me feels so vitally important to where we as a people need to go from here as a people. Otherwise, let's do a recreation, put it in a museum and turn the page. Skip so much of this book of Exodus because now it's all details. Not at all. These details reflect who we are called to be. And so thank you to my very talented colleagues for bringing Ruach Chochmah, the Holy Spirit, through, reflecting all of us. Thank you so much.
Wow. Well of wills, as what came out through reading these texts, and in the experience of the kohenet practice and education, how was it? What did that inspire? How did that feel? And can you also enlighten us a little bit about that education as well?
Can I first speak to, and I think it does tie in, but I'd love to speak to this word inclusion, because I think there's so much to unpack in that word. And I think it also definitely ties into this, this chapter.
because inclusion can mean inviting people a seat at the table, but it can also mean giving people the microphone, you know? Inclusion is hard because it threatens the dominant discourse. It might unseat the dominant discourse, you know? So that's why inclusion can be scary. It's not a simple thing. And I think that that ties into the chapter, because what we were thinking about was, you know, are these sacred vestments, are these costumes meant to set the priest aside or to connect? Is the priest meant to be a channel, a bridge, or is the priest meant to be special and an example? And which one of these is a mirror, actually? You know, is it, we only see ourselves by seeing the other, right? We're only conscious of ourselves through our consciousness of the other and what we're not, what we're separate from. But, you know, relative to this theme of inclusion, are we trying to mirror and be the same, or are we trying to distinguish? So that was one of the things that we were thinking about. And as a feminist collective and an embodied feminist collective, I personally do a lot of movement and choreography. What we were working with in the moment of creating these pieces was a relationship, not I would say not body and text or mind and text. It was actually like the forest that we were in, the trees that we were, it was almost a dance with trees, my body, Hadar's body, and Hannah's camera and Hannah's eye. So there's a dance happening between all of us. And I think setting this photo shoot in nature, it's a really different kind of process. It's a different kind of listening, because with the body as the site of Kodesh, the body as the holy site, we have to include nature in the site, a site of holiness, and as a bridge to the whole, to what is holy and divine. So you don't really see the trees in these pictures, but except for in that first image, our hands are grasping a tree. What do you call it? A tree stump, the tree itself, the body of the tree.
Trunks.
What?
Trunks.
Thank you, trunk of a tree. So, and then in the image of Hadar, you know, holding her shoulders with this weight, what you can't see is that her back is up against a big boulder, and the shot is from above. The camera is above her, and so involved in this like artistic interpretation and channeling, and very impulsive and embodied interpretation, is this invisibility, this invisible nature that was taking part and inspiring our interpretation as well. So that's, I think, also tying that into the inclusion topic of including nature and including non-human souls and non-human bodies in what is holy is important to us as well.
What's so striking in these images compared to the text also is that the garments are being replaced with hands, and with what ideas come from, what was the inspiration for making that shift? And can you speak more to that symbol of the hands?
I mean, I think Hannah, you want to take it?
Well, I just wanted to say, I think Meirav like spoke to that beautifully earlier about how the hands are the symbol for the priest. But I also think that we are not trying to approximate like, look, here's exactly what the text says, and let's try to make these exact garments replicated in the same way that like the evangelical Christians have created a perfect model of Noah's Ark in wherever the heck in the South somewhere. You know what I mean? Like that's not what's interesting to us. We want to draw attention to the parts of the body that are being used as a site for consciousness raising, the shoulders, a space for weight to go, the heart, a place for weight to go, right? So I think that we wanted to keep this more figurative, and the hands were a necessary sort of like constraint into just drawing our attention to these parts of the body that are that make the sum, the whole being, excuse me, let me say this a little differently. But I feel like this entire kohen recipe is so much of a gestalt, right? It's not like, okay, you have your little headband and you got your apron and you got your amulet and then you're the kohen, you're the priest. It's this whole consciousness raising effort to draw in memory, to draw in the heart space that creates an entire being that is ready to serve the people. So that's part of, for me, what the hands were about, to help us arrive at that, to also help us get in the mode of that consciousness too.
I think also, it's like when you read the text, like what Hannah was saying, we weren't interested in this literal translation of it to be like in representative drawing. You also, the text is so instructional and so dry in some way, but if you actually place yourself in it, it's like, wow, what was that like energy like to like be in that sort of space? And that felt really important to try and capture some sort of like energy and movement in this work. And like Nessa was saying, that you don't get to see the trees in the forest, but that was so integral to the photo shoot, to be in that energy. And then like, how does that then get translated again into this kind of like cosmic energy and like an urgency? I love that word that you said earlier, Markus, about like what this urgency to give and this urgency to connect to divine and to like be in that relationship, or almost like a fervor. So that felt important too, is like, how do we capture that energy in this work?
Yeah, lastly, I'll just add that, I mean, even if right now the folks who are on this call right now, if just for a second you took note of your hands and took note of what they're connected to in your body, they're like headed straight for your heart, and they're the direct channel, you know? So if you feel the openness of your heart, they're essentially messengers for this space and the will, you know, and agency. It's like the will and agency. And I think you can really feel into that yourself as well.
And
yeah, sorry, Dver.
oh, sorry. I also wanted to ask you, Rabbi, from your Dvar Torah that you wrote, you spoke a lot about the large macroscopy and the big picture of what the representation of the entire people is from the perspective of God. And in these images, we see very zoomed in images on the individuals. And I'm curious to hear what your reflections are on the difference, or maybe on ways that those ideas converge.
Reflections. Devere? For so many years, I thought that a hologram was just one of those things that shows up on Star Trek. But something that's holographic is, as I understand it now, something in which the micro is a small image of the macro. It's like William Blake's poem about the world in a grain of sand, a fractal. And so, no, I don't see a distinction. If everything is ultimately a unity, if we mean what we say when we say Malocho la'aretz kvodo, the whole world is full of God's glory from Isaiah 6. If everything ultimately is part of that unity, us and each of us, or as the teacher of my teachers called us, chips off the old block, then it necessarily follows that the infinite not just can be seen, but must be seen in the micro, in each of us, in what we do in this moment, in this breath, in this image. This too is the name. I started with the macro, partly to remind myself that once you change how you see, it's really hard to unsee, although we do it pretty regularly. But once we see the world with no boundaries and no pollution and seeing the artificiality of so much that seems to distinguish us, or just how ultimately unimportant so many of these things are that seem to distinguish us. We can't help but see that in everything, if we're true to it. So back to my colleagues talking about inclusion. Nessa, I think, was really poignant on this point. Inclusion isn't just, okay, let's take Aaron's funny hat, take it off, and put it on Schmoopy over here. That's not real inclusion. That's just translating. And not even well. The function of the kohen will take its expression with Nessa in a different way, because Nessa is Nessa. Or for Kate, or for Ronnie, or for Baruch, or for Rabbi Alicia, or for Tina, or for Yona, or for all of us. It has to, because we can see the world as a big blue marble. The world in a grain of sand. Kodesh Ladonai. Right on your forehead.
Very, very well put. Richard, you've it seems like you have what to say. So why don't you emerge?
Thank you, Devere. I'm annoying that way. Please forgive me. Anyway, it's certainly a fascinating presentation, but I have some questions. And the questions is that since this is both this parsha and also the artwork and the talking about it has focused on the idea of a kohen. Leaving aside the distinction between, since the Torah talks about a kohen in the male, and the presenters are talking about a kohen in the female, gender doesn't particularly concern me, but I think the notion of the kohen, very specifically kohen gadol, has to do with, in my simplistic understanding, is as a conduit. Now, conduits demand distinctions. Without distinctions, there's nothing to flow from point A to B. If it's all part of a whole, then what do you need a conduit for? So kind of my question to the presenters and to the rabbi is that if you see the world with no boundaries, if you see this whole thing, well then, what's the function of a kohen? Now, when you talk about Kodesh to Hashem, which of course is enormously important, it's not about him, or by the way, her. It's about Kodesh as a conduit, meaning while there may be many paths, the Torah seems to be saying that where things matter, at least according to the Torah, there's one path to take, that out overflowing, God willing, a blessing from the Rabbonu Shalom, from heaven, to us, who are radically different than God, and interestingly enough, somewhat different from that Kohen, because he's Kodesh to Hashem simply as he's a tool, he's a vehicle. He is not Kodesh because of him.
Holiness is a directionality. It's an orientation. So a person who is channeling holiness or reminding us of holiness is simply pointing towards an orientation to which all human consciousness and embodiment is able to orient itself towards and continue in alignment with. So that for me is what it means to be holy to God. It's not there or here or in me or up there or not here. It's literally a directionality, and it's a striving towards that directionality to me, which is why I think the rabbi's explanation of the billboard is really helpful in that, because it's just a reminder. It's just an arrow, basically. And it's not an arrow to a thing that's somewhere. It's an arrow to literally reminding our bodies to do something, to point towards the direction. That's how I see it.
And to add,
Please.
to add to that, I mean, I think that was really integral to this work, was to show process, was to both in the photo shoot to like experience this process of putting our bodies into these positions to channel these like priestly garments, and then why we really focused on the words like the Ruach Chochmah, because that is the divine wisdom being channeled through the people. That word isn't in relation to the high priest. That word's in relation to the people, the craftspeople, the people who are donating their materials, donating their time, donating their handiwork to making. And so that was a really big focus of ours, was like, it isn't just about the high priest. It's about that relationship that allows the high priest to be the high priest and to channel a divinity, like what Nessa is saying. And it's all in the relationship of everyone contributing.
Yeah. To my good friend Richard, I couldn't agree with you more. The problem is that you weren't part of the exegetical tradition that started in the 1100s. Because if you look at what the Meforshim said, what that headband was about speaking to any number of people, but not the people. It was either reminder to God, that's the Rashbam, where the high priest is taking on the role of the merit of our ancestors, saying, remember the merit of our ancestors, so you should accept the korbanot, you should accept the offering, you should accept me as a channel, not because I'm so awesome, but because I'm really them. Or alternatively, it's a reminder to the high priest himself. That was Naftali Tzvi Yehuda in 1800s Poland. And you look through the Meforshim, it's either it's a reminder to God or it's a reminder to the priest himself. Whether it was an existential reminder or a functional reminder is a delicious conversation. And I think we can go really deep into the role, because the bat kohen, not so much, right? And the kahuna could be polluted in certain ways, and you can't go to a cemetery, all the things. Okay. But it was never to the people. The lowercase d democratization of who this was about and who this was telegraphing what to include the broader collectivity of that mamlechet kohanim, simply found no expression, which kind of makes sense from this postmodern perspective, where it's all about individual choice, for good and for ill, where the role of collectivity and the individual's place in collectivity is something that we think of now, but probably not so much then.
Okay, fair enough. I get that. I guess in a way, the Kodesh LaHashem I interpret to, and it's unfair, but I interpret it to be on the heart and soul of every Kohen who stands in front of my congregation.
All's fair in love and Torah, Richard.
And when he blesses the congregation, that's the sensibility of that kind of bracha coming through. And I and we try to get into the moment. And you know what? Sometimes I do, and it's not about him. And I hear what you're saying, certainly, but this is I do see these things through modern eyes, right? And yeah.
Just like one kind of little, I don't know, to put it in a different context though, like the channel, it sometimes is about the channel. Like if you're thinking in, when you're in shul and if you have like a cantor chazan whose voice you just don't agree with, that's a difficult channel, right? And so like it is about that then in some ways. I mean, I don't know, not to like
but
really get into this more, and I know there's more questions, but I don't know.
But the cantor has a different role. He's a shliach, and sometimes you say, "Uh-oh, he's not my messenger. I don't like, he's neither bearing my message, but the role of the kohen is really radically different as I understand it as a conduit." It's anyway. Also the notion of the tzitz with Kodesh Hashem is also, for me, has a special also meaning, because there's a whole midrash that talks about Esnat, who was sent down to Egypt, and she carried a plate with her to identify her as a Jew. And there's one tradition that says that she, on this plate, that identified her as Kodesh Hashem, and because she was the daughter of Dinah from the rape, and but ended up marrying Joseph. So I have, to me, these things just reverberate all over the place. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Richard. And also to add to the conversation, Baruch says that there's a challenge that we can even see that the depiction of the singularity of the kohen only comes perhaps as a reminder or formality later on, but early on, even before Mount Sinai, God proclaims that it's an entire kingdom of priests and priestesses.
That's our job, yeah. Right.
Rabbi Elisha, would you come forth and contribute to the conversation?
Shalom, everyone. I remember being very surprised by a commentary that said each of the elements of the garment of the high priest was also a protection against pride and against bad speech and against doing anything that was wrong. I mean, each one, it was a whole list. And it occurred to me when I first looked at the art piece today, that there was a kind of womb-like protection about each of the amulets. And that's why I saw them as, see, it looked like protecting the womb, the sort of a rachamim kind of a thing. And the jewels were also protecting, and the knots are protecting, and the gold thread is protecting. And it's all in this circularity of kind of like pregnant, womb-like golden blue, exalted armor. So I saw it kind of differently. And I kept thinking of that idea of the garments not only being l'chavod l'tiferet, but also as protection. So that just really struck me that element hadn't been discussed, and it seemed to just jump out at me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I love that is what's jumping out at you. And I think you sharing that is just sometimes a testament to like maybe what's happening subconsciously in the creation of work, or what's more intuitive without realizing it. And it takes another pair of eyes to say it out loud, or to name it in a way that
because you didn't do each gem, a green one and a purple one and a blue one and a black. You just read the essence of gem energy. And so everything you took like to its ethereal essence. And so I just saw it as surrounding with that kind of energy to protect the holiness of the carrier, of the blessing. I don't want to use the word priest or priestess, but I like this idea of a conduit. I like this idea of the one who has this awesome responsibility, the one who's got everybody on their shoulders. And this was my son's Torah portion back in 1991. And he drew an illustration of the high priest, and he liked all the different elements of it. You know, a 13-year-old looks at the pshat and how far we've come from that, where he now is an artist who does something called tribal markings. And it looks very much like the middle one. You can look up Amir Magal, M-A-G-A-L. I think he would just love this art. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Sapira notes that she was very intrigued by the stack of the rocks kind of above the shoulders, and questioning, is that kind of a symbol of the directionality of the relationship? You've spoken about burden and weight and feeling like that's something, or also perhaps the fragility of balancing those rocks and the weight of responsibility that the kohen wears. There was curiosity about that imagery is very striking.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about the weight and thinking about the stacking and the, you know, sometimes it's like things are beyond us, but also they're like the pillars too, and they become the like connections between the strands as well. So thinking about them as both the weight and the stack and how that sits on us, as well as is a protection and encases us too. That answer that question.
Yes. Wow. First of all, everyone, I just take a moment to feel the conduit of the Ruach Chochmah that we've all received in this just fabulous presentation. It's really just been a pleasure and an honor to hear all of these ideas kind of formulate and emerge into just profound beauty and inspiring insights. This has been just an incredible unpacking of some of those ideas, but I feel like we can kind of look at the images and be mesmerized with the depth and profundity and allow the challenge of it, and allow ourselves not to say, oh, it's stuck, the text is stuck in a certain way, and because of it being stuck, we don't have an opportunity to challenge it, to allow ourselves to say that what the images have been, and the precedent of that Noah's Ark in the South, of like seeing things very literally, doesn't allow us to expand ourselves. And because of all of the ideas of these past few weeks, you've created something that has all of these rabbis and scholars and thinkers just totally involved. So thank you all. Thank you all for attending and for being here, and for honoring both all four of these really powerful teachers and wisdom bearers. If anyone wants to see the image, it's you can see it at the Amen Institute, and you can read the Dvar Torah. It's a beautiful Dvar Torah. And I hope that you can carry all of these insights into your Sabbath and think about it as we elevate ourselves and distinguish the opportunity of including others and bringing more people to the conversation. I think really that in itself is the artistry of what we're trying to create at the Amen Institute, and is the artistry of making art itself.
Thank you so much, Dvir. We really appreciate this opportunity. It's been really nourishing. And thank you, Rabbi Markus, too. It's been a really nice back and forth and super inspiring for us.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Nessa and Dvir and everyone. It's been a joy.
Have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.